What up, guys? How's it going? I guess I'll say. Welcome in the Kurt Magoosh Sports. I wanted to talk about a topic. You guys don't have to click on this video because it's a saturated topic that everybody covers in sports media. It's kind of but instead of talking about why players opt out, because we all know the reason. It's because of money. And then, the common theme is that you should save yourself for an NFL check or for life-changing money for your family. Eventually, you're going to see players decide to leave the field the final weeks of rivalry season and the final weeks of the regular season if their team is not competitive. Like if they play for a Vanderbilt, if they play for Duke, you're going to see this happening. But let's try to think of a solution to get these guys playing at full strength in these bowl games. I even think that I like the college game better than the NFL. I even think that the NFL having 17 weeks is ridiculous. It takes away the product in September because teams are just purposefully, not going full throttle. They're playing it like a horse race. Instead of the Kentucky Derby, it's the Belmont Stakes where it's longer, and they're gliding and jogging instead of sprinting at a pace that you'd like to see them play. But for bowl season, the games in Michigan or, whatever, the Ford Motors Bowl, for example, with Carson Strong, Cole Turner, and several other of these guys opting out of the game. One, a solution would be to have less bowl games, but that's not going to happen because these companies are going to want more money. Then people say to expand the playoff. I don't necessarily even want to have it at 8 teams. I think that 6 teams is perfect, and it should remain at 6 teams. Everybody wants to expand, and nobody wants to take away if there's too many teams that are in the dance. If you make it 12 teams, you're going to see teams resting their guys. There's going to be a lack of urgency in the regular season. But if you make it 6 teams and the first 2 teams get byes, that's going to be very, very exciting for college football because 8 teams is even going to be too many teams. And the fact is, listen, if you're Texas Tech, if you're Kansas State, look at Baylor. They ended up winning the Big 12 this year. They would have probably made a 16 playoff, or it would have been a tremendous debate. It forces a group of 5 to go undefeated. It forces you to be Cincinnati and to go undefeated, so the regular season is still preserved and the best teams are still going to be there at the end. Having an 18 playoff, it totally devalues the championship weekend. It forces teams, again, the last couple games of the season, you might see some teams resting guys, and the SEC championship then would mean nothing. But if it was at 6 teams, it would be better. You don't want to see, if Ohio State loses to Michigan, they don't deserve to go to the playoff because they lost to Oregon. That should be the right. That's why Ohio State-Michigan was such a beautiful game, because it was a elimination game. It was a playoff game in week whatever it was, in week 11. Michigan State, Ohio State was a playoff game. Michigan, Iowa was a playoff game. But if you expanded it to 8, then Michigan can lose to Iowa. You get more mulligans. But the thing about college football is that it should be so hard to make the college football playoff. It should be almost nearly impossible. Now, I do kind of get it, I think Power 5 levels, I get it for a Coastal that goes undefeated, or a Louisiana Lafayette. That sucks to go undefeated and not have a chance to compete for an FBS national championship. Gosh, I understand that. I mean, maybe there can be a system in place where, like you can have group of five, like Cincinnati play against an undefeated, Coastal Carolina for the right, instead of having maybe that conference's championship or whatever, they might have to play an extra game for the right to go to the Power Five national championship. I mean, that's just the way it is, because Power Five, it just has better recruits, it has better players. But if you still want to allow a spot for an undefeated team, whether it be Coastal or Cincinnati, I still want to have them included. I was really happy that Cincinnati was included this year, and it was entertaining having them in there. I mean, I wanted to see them show more offense. But yeah, let's talk about now a way to keep these guys. So playoff expansion, I would have it 6 teams. 6 is perfect. The top 2 seeds like Bama and Michigan would get buys, so that Georgia loss would really hurt. And I think that, again, you don't adjust the system that much. 12 is way too many teams. That's almost ridiculous, because then you're going to have 3 lost teams making it to the playoff. The regular season and the rivalries are going to be devalued. College football is great because there's not many games. The NFL's not good because there's too many football games. I mean, you watch the games in September. The Kansas City Chiefs didn't show up in September. The Arizona Cardinals in December decided to leave. The Cowboys lost 31-0 to the Broncos. And that wasn't just an aberration. It's because the season's too long. Guys are getting injured. It's ridiculous. The product is unpredictable, and it's not good. You don't have full buy-in. And and I hate to say back in the 80s, but in the 80s, they had 14 games. And then they decided to go to 16. And it was 16 games, and it was perfect. It was a perfect system. And then, a couple of people were upset that on Labor Day they had to go watch backup players. A couple of fans were tired of seeing backup players, but those backup players are what you need for special teams, and those quote unquote backups, they need that extra week in order to make the roster. The training camps are cut down because you're adding a 16th game to the regular season. But anyway, I'm losing track here of what we're talking about. We're talking now about college football. We're talking now about bowls, all right? So this is what I think. I think that the Rose Bowl, every New Year's Six Bowl, or the Peach Bowl is considered, the Cotton Bowl is considered, the Sugar Bowl. If there is a way, the powers that be, I think the NCAA is a $1 billion organization. If every junior and senior makes $50,000 off of that game, that's incredible money for the winning team. So that means that Kenny Pickett, instead of just like him leaving and whatever over a T-shirt and a trophy, now the offensive lineman, now all of his players could be getting a huge chunk of cash to start off their careers, because it could be $75,000. They have to be draft eligible players, and you could get $75,000 for each player on that roster. Okay, it could be afforded. And then Kenny Pickett, instead of leaving, he actually would be letting down his teammates more, because they wouldn't have a chance to all compete for this money. You're also incentivizing them to play out the regular season to get to that New Year's Six Bowl where there's all that money included. There can be other bowls like the Belk Bowl and other decent bowls that can also offer out cash to players that are juniors and seniors, especially the graduates, because it incentivizes graduation and it incentivizes these guys. And I know that people are going to get upset because they're going to say that, these college kids shouldn't really make money. And I get what they're saying, because they enjoyed years where they watched and the kids wouldn't be making money because they're younger. They maybe haven't gone through life as much. And when you're older, you don't want to see a younger person have money. That's how some people believe, right? And you can try to understand that point of view, even if you don't agree with that point of view. I think, again, like every person in media is basically saying the young person should get paid. So the point of view you don't have is the people that are angry at the opt-outs and angry at the NIL. That's the viewpoint that you won't hear on the media. So the point is, though, is that I'm all in favor of incentivizing, because incentivize graduation, get these guys playing, and then it forces them to really make a decision, because then they're great friends, they're best friends. If you're all making 75 grand, then you're so in it to get to that Sugar Bowl. You're loving the bowl experience. You're loving everything about it. The game would be so intense, super intense. So guys are already making money, and they have been getting paid off by boosters. The juniors and seniors then that are eligible for the draft, you make the New Year's Six Bowls and a couple other bowls, you incentivize the winning team so that they will participate in that game. Because then I believe that then because the point is, right, you don't want to see opt-outs. You have to make it more challenging for these kids to opt out. Like Carson Strong, unfortunately, that bowl game might not have the money, right? But let's look at, a Baylor. Let's look at the Sugar Bowl. Let's look at Kenny Pickett. If he wins, the entire team is making money, is making 75 grand. That is great money to start off, especially for those linemen that are seniors that don't have an NFL or Canadian Football League future. Those guys then can take that money into their next endeavor, and they can even pay off their apartment after they graduate college. They can have that $75K in cash. And there is money, I believe, with the advertisers and with these bowls, because I don't think the Rose Bowl wants to see Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave sit out. They want the best players. We want the best players on the field. We want it to be important. We want to celebrate Rose Bowl championships. I think that even the people off the field, like the people in the football operations room, should have, the strength coaches, the coaches that are not on field guys, like the analysts, they should get. I think that they might be getting compensated for a Rose Bowl win, but I think if you compensate winning and compensate these guys playing in these games, you kind of have to talk their language, because I know that the NCAA and people, they don't like players making money, and they don't like seeing these opt-outs, so they don't want to cave in on their position because they don't like it. But instead, they're losing out because the players who are very important to the product are not playing in these games. Now, you're still going to have guys that are not going to play, but it's going to be even more controversial. And instead of their teammates, because with Kenny Pickett, here's the thing, right? If you're a teammate of Kenny Pickett's in that locker room and he doesn't decide to play, a lot of guys are like, you know what? It was a great year. This is my last game I'm ever going to play, but Kenny Pickett's going to be a first-round quarterback. I understand it. But then if it's 80 grand for everybody in the locker room, it's going to make it more difficult on that player to not play that final game. And I want to see these players play. I want the Rose Bowl to feel as important as possible, because I love college football. I love the Rose Bowl. Every year I enjoy it. And if we get the best players playing in these Rose Bowls, it'll be spectacular for the sport. It'll be even tremendous. So maybe there can also be a sponsorship as well. Kenny Pickett's a first-round grade. Maybe he gets paid to participate because he's a first-round quarterback. Maybe then he gets paid an extra, $5 million to play in that game. And unfortunately, injuries can happen everywhere. In the past, like in previous years, you didn't see as many opt-outs. And it's maybe because players, I'm trying to think of why that is. I think it's because agents now are more in the players' ear about their future. Maybe players are more, understand money more, understand risk more. That could be a detriment to the game of college football in a sense, right? You'd love to see these guys just go out and perform, but you also understand it from a human standpoint and the portion of risk and all that gets into it, right? So it's not an easy solution. I don't blame the players for securing money, for going to the combine, but for college football, you will see less opt-outs with more money on the table. It will make the decision harder. You need to make the decision harder. In terms of college football playoffs, I don't want to see it be 12. Again, the regular season is not as good. You don't want to have an 8-4 Big 12 team into the college football playoff. And then, by the way, mediocre coaches can say we were in the college football playoff. Then you know what's going to happen, by the way? Quarterfinals, they're going to say nobody's going to opt out. But guess what? If it's like the 12 team going against the 5th team, you're going to have guys opt out because it's going to be too long of a road to make a championship anyway. You're going to see coaches leaving. It's not good. And the regular season will suffer because players will be saving it for the important games, all right? The regular season, to me, should be incredibly valued. You want to see the best teams in the end. You want to see the best teams do it. I understand the whole, like, let's get more teams involved in the chase, but then for the elite teams, it becomes a worse viewing experience because then they're saving themselves, and then the whole body of college football isn't as good. I still think that the 8-4s and the 7-5s, these are college guys that, again, the rivalries in the regular season, even though they're not making the playoffs, like you look at Texas Tech, for example, hasn't been to a bowl game in so long. You know, when they played Iowa State and the kicker drilled a 63-yard field goal, it was still incredible, all right? Just because they weren't competing for a playoff doesn't mean that it wasn't still great. It's 12 games, which I love. So the system, I believe, is really, really good. It's just a couple of tweaks, a couple of changes could make the system even more efficient in terms of the postseason, but the regular season is the best regular season. It's tremendous. Taunting, the targeting rule, I believe that the targeting rule should change. I believe that that's outdated, and the targeting rule should honestly leave the game of football because, again, you want these guys to be incentivized to play. And if you have a senior or a junior that gets ejected in the first quarter of their favorite game just because a wide receiver ducked his head, I mean, that's making the game of football less enjoyable. We need to be proactive and make the game of football more enjoyable. I understand that there's head hunting in that thing. Maybe you can have like 2 warnings or something because you do want to keep them safe. But at the same time, you want the future of the game of football. You want players to still play in these games. You don't want Jameson Williams, telling his grandkids, all right, you don't want him telling future generations like his grandkid, I didn't play in the Iron Bowl because I hit somebody on a special teams play. That is not forward thinking, okay, the targeting call, in my opinion. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys listening to this. I'm kind of passionate about this opt-out stuff, even though everybody is. People are making great points everywhere about it. And so it's something to discuss. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.